Hi, Steve Riley. Welcome to this episode of Great Practice, Great Life. Today, I am here with a longtime Atticus member, a fantastic trial lawyer, someone who's living his great life and having a wonderful time building a great practice. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. And when you and I were talking, and I know that you are a big Grateful Dead fan, you got it the long, strange trip that you've been on to get to your great life and your great practice. And I think it would help our members just to understand what you went through to get where you're at, and then what you did to basically acquire or build the practice that you currently have. How did you get there? Like, how did you start? Did you always want to be a trial lawyer? I mean, what's the story?
One of my sisters is a divorce lawyer in Beverly Hills and has a great practice, was working for a really prominent divorce lawyer, worked on Johnny Carson's third or fourth divorce, whatever it is. And she really influenced me. And so when I got out of school, I went back to Chicago. I took a paralegal certificate, and then I applied to all 5 of the Chicago law schools, and I got into 3, not the University of Chicago and not Northwestern. But I chose John Marshall because they had a trial curriculum. I thought to myself, if I'm going to do this, I want to try cases. And so from the first day of law school, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And by the time I graduated from college, I had been through 5 multi-million-dollar jury trials as a clerk.
Oh my gosh.
But doing all of the background work, is obviously a part of a team, but I was involved with everything. So I got out of school not only with John Marshall's great trial prep, but ready to actually walk the walk to some degree. Obviously, still had a lot of experience.
If you were to give advice to another lawyer who's plaintiff's attorney trying to market their practice, how many attorney referral sources would you say they needed to target?
Well, that could be a huge question. You think about, you recently interviewed David Axelrod from Chicago. He sent out mass mailings to everybody in the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association saying, I'll take your cases if you don't want to do it. That's one extreme end, and it worked very well because we were both kind of coming up. He's a little bit older than I am, but we were both coming up about the same time in the 90s. So I didn't know him, but I knew of him. Probably met him at an ITLA. But that's one example of an extreme example of trying to market to as many people as possible. I kind of consciously decided I wanted to target lawyers that have a lot of client involvement or client turnover. So estate planners, divorce lawyers, bankruptcy lawyers, people like that who they see a lot of people over the course of a month. They're new clients, existing clients. I do my best to talk to them and tell them what we can do. Colorado's tough because we are not allowed to pay referral fees. If a lawyer sends us a case and they want to work with us, we can set up an arrangement with client approval where they can be paid the value of the time that they're put in. Translating that to a contingent fee can be difficult, but we're not allowed to pay referral fees. So it's not like somebody can dish off a case to me and expect, if I make a $100,000 settlement that they're going to get 10 grand. It doesn't work that way. So it makes it a little harder. So you really have to show these lawyers that you're talking to that you really care about what you do. You really care about their clients that they're trusting you with, because their reputation's on the line too. If they send you to me and I don't do a good job, you're not going to look good. So that's part of it. So I've chosen that path for lawyers. So I think I categorize them as more, I don't know, not transactional, but not really hardcore PI litigators.
At this point in your life, it sounds like you're focusing a lot more on having a great life in addition to being a great trial lawyer. What advice would you say to a younger lawyer who's listening to this podcast or this episode and saying, I'll get there like Bob one day, but right now I need to put in, 12 to 14-hour days, 7 days a week? What would you say to that person?
I would say to that person, you need to look at it from the top down. You cannot continue to be productive and do everything you do if you are grinding 12 to 14 hours a day every day. Now, if you're in a large law firm, you have to do what's expected of you. The workload is much bigger. But if you're talking to somebody who's in a small law firm or wants to start their own law firm, you've got to be very intentional on what you do with your time. And that's very hard to do because especially when you're on a big learning curve, you're maybe dealing with an area of medicine or preparing to deal with an expert that you've never dealt with before. Of course, you have to spend every waking minute to learn that science, learn about that witness, do that, sure. But you've got to make time for yourself physically. You've got to make time for marketing because if you don't, you're not going to have any cases to work on anyway. And you're not going to have the energy and the health to do the work that you need to do and do it well.
That's fantastic. The short-term gain is work hard till you burn out. The long-term game is to take care of yourself, keep marketing so you can have consistent, great cases for consistent, great cash flow. And then, make sure that you're developing the skills you need to develop, but you can't sacrifice the long-term game of taking good care of yourself and marketing so you build up a nice referral base. So you always have good cases to work on. So I think it's perfect. If you could go back and talk to young Bob and say, here's what I suggest you do. What advice would you give to young Bob at this point in your career?
Well, young Bob getting out of law school, I would have said, trust your gut, go with what you love and you knew you were good at. And I would have stayed on the plaintiff side, whether I'd gone to work for Pat Salvi or Corboy's office or any of the major firms in Chicago. You've got to be able to identify what you feel strongly about and that you have some talent in, and you need to go that direction. And it's hard because you get so many inputs as a young person. The reason I told my origin story in the way that I did is that, I made a conscious decision to go against what I knew in my gut and my heart that I wanted to do. And it set me off. It took me years. It took me half my career to get back to where I want to be. And I think about that in a way of, and I do mentor other younger lawyers and talk to them about it. But I tell them, look, you've got to think about what are you good at? What do you really like? I don't know if you've seen lately, there's been a lot of stuff on Instagram and in podcasting about, this whole follow your dream is bullshit. I can't remember which of the currently popular podcasters is throwing that message around. It's good advice and bad advice. I like the concept of go with what you know you're good at, play to your strengths. If you play to your strengths, whether you've got a strong personality, whether you're very congenial, whether you're technically great, whether you're really, really intelligent and can see everything, it doesn't matter. You've got to pick one. And if that's your strong suit, play to that and develop it as you grow and mature. And you can avoid having a long, strange trip if you take some time and learn how to do that and start bouncing around.